In the palace of the Phaeacians, Odysseus continues his account. After leaving the land of the Cyclopes, with the curse of Polyphemus still hanging over them, the ships resumed their voyage. The sea carried them to the island of Aeolus. Lord of the winds, the island was surrounded by a wall of bronze and rose like a rock set apart in the sea. There Aeolus lived with his family in an orderly and prosperous dwelling. Odysseus went ashore and was received with hospitality. For an entire month he remained with Aeolus, recounting the events of Troy and the hardships of the journey. When the time came to depart, Odysseus asked for help in returning to Ithaca. Aeolus agreed. He gathered all the contrary winds into a great leather bag and fastened it with a silver cord, so that none could escape. He left free only the favorable wind that would drive the ships straight toward home. Then he handed the bag to Odysseus and entrusted it to his care. The ships set sail. For 9 days and 9 nights they sailed without deviation. The favorable wind guided them, and Odysseus remained at the helm without sleep, so as not to lose the course. On the 10th day, the shores of Ithaca appeared. Fires could be seen along the coast, and their homeland seemed within reach. At that moment, Odysseus, exhausted from fatigue, fell asleep. The companions, seeing the tightly bound bag in his keeping, began to suspect. They thought that Aeolus had given Odysseus gold and silver, and that their leader meant to keep the treasure for himself. Envy and distrust replaced discipline. They decided to open the bag. They did not know what it contained. When they loosened the cord, all the imprisoned winds burst out at once. A sudden and violent storm arose. The ships were overwhelmed, driven away from the site of Ithaca, and carried back into the open sea. Odysseus awoke and saw his homeland vanish on the horizon. For a moment he considered letting himself die, but he chose to endure. After days of forced sailing, the ships returned to the island of Aeolus. Odysseus hoped to receive help again. He went ashore and presented himself before the Lord of the Winds, explaining what had happened. Aeolus listened, but his attitude had changed. Aeolus said that a man so deeply opposed by fate could not be favored by the gods. If the winds had rebelled in such a way, it meant that a god stood against his return. For this reason, Aeolus refused to offer further aid. He ordered Odysseus to leave the island and not return. Odysseus and his companions set sail once more. Their strength diminished and their spirits broken. The chance to return home had been real. Ithaca had stood before their eyes, and through error and mistrust it had been lost. Odysseus tells the Phaeacians this episode as another proof of the fragility of his crew and the difficulty of leading men worn by hardship and suspicion. After leaving the island of Aeolus, the ships sailed on for 6 more days. On the 7th day they reached a new land, with a deep and narrow harbour surrounded by high cliffs. There Odysseus ordered 11 ships to enter the harbour, while his own remained outside, tied with a rope. He did not yet know that this place would become another disaster. In the palace of the Phaeacians, Odysseus concludes this part of the tale. The storm of the winds had carried Ithaca away when it was already near, and now a new danger awaited them. In a land inhabited by giants even more terrible than the Cyclops, the journey continued, and the losses were not over.